pyramids are just the start. These bizarre Egyptian artifacts look like they came from the future, not the past. So, are you ready for the weirdest crossover in history? Because apparently, ancient Egypt was into anime. Like, for real. A photo started circulating online showing a slab of limestone with an ancient carving, hieroglyphs, eyes of Ra, standard stuff. But smack in the middle, it looks like one of those over-the-top anime faces. You know, the kind wide eyes, tongue out, that expression straight from late-night corners of the internet. And no, this isn't Photoshop. It's a real artifact behind glass, displayed like it belongs in a museum, which it does. And here's where it gets strange. People have pointed out that this face matches a popular internet meme from Japanese manga culture, yet the carving is allegedly thousands of years old. The eyes, the mouth, even the circle in the middle. The resemblance is almost too perfect. Coincidence? Some say yes. Others think it's either a massive prank by a modern artist or that we're looking at a case of pareidolia, our brain trying to make familiar shapes out of randomness. But is that really what this is? Now, of course, mainstream archaeologists roll their eyes at all this. They say what we're seeing here is a stylistic overlap, pure chance, that the anime face is just a layering of symbols that eroded into a funny pattern. But if you've seen the image, and we have, it's not just kind of similar, it's spot on. Let that sink in. A meme-worthy face from the internet age somehow carved into an Egyptian stone that predates modern electricity, let alone Japanese animation. Is it a prank? A hoax? A clue from a civilization that knew more than we give them credit for? If the ancients really were into this stuff 5,000 years ago, maybe we've been underestimating them all along. Or maybe, just maybe, what we think of as history isn't exactly the full story. Here's a question no one seems to answer properly. How do you drill a perfectly symmetrical, deep cylindrical hole into solid granite using only copper tools and manpower? According to official history, that's exactly what pre-dynastic Egyptians did. But if you've ever worked with granite, like actual granite, you'd know that stuff doesn't mess around. It's one of the hardest rocks on Earth. And yet, scattered across Egypt are drill holes so smooth, so precise, so deep. They look like they were made with diamond-tipped industrial tools. Some spiral inside like a modern core drill. Not chipped, not smashed, drilled. And the best part? Some of these holes are in Aswan granite, harder than most power tool blades you'll find at a hardware store. How could people with copper chisels and sand manage something that even today would require heavy machinery? Some engineers say it's simply impossible without rotational drilling, using extremely hard materials, like tungsten or diamond. Except those materials didn't officially exist until just a few centuries ago. So what gives? There are theories. Some say the holes are evidence of lost technology, maybe an ancient form of sonic or vibrational drilling. Others whisper about help from beyond, non-human intervention. Yes, the A word gets thrown around here too, but even if you stay grounded, it's hard to look at these holes and not ask who had the tech, and where did it go? Because if regular people with sticks and string made those holes, then we seriously need to rethink what primitive means. Let's talk about one of the eeriest statues ever carved, the seated figure of Pharaoh Kafra, found near the Giza Plateau. Most statues from that era are impressive, sure, but this one stares at you. No, really. Its eyes catch light like they're alive. And here's where things get wild. Those eyes aren't just painted, they're built. The sculpture's gaze comes from a unique combo of mountain crystal, polished stone, and copper wire inlays, layered to replicate how the human eye reflects light. We're talking about optical engineering on a piece of art that's over 4,000 years old. It's like someone figured out how to make a statue with 3D glass eyeballs before the word optics even existed. Historians call it a marvel. Engineers say replicating this level of craftsmanship today would require precision machining and advanced materials. So how did ancient artisans manage it? No one knows. This isn't the kind of thing you just accidentally figure out with bronze tools and no microscopes. Some suggest the crystal eyes were made using lost casting methods, or even early magnifying lenses. Others believe they were meant to simulate something much stranger, like surveillance or awareness, as if Khafra was meant to see forever. And when you realize that these are some of the only ancient Egyptian statues with such eyes, it raises the question, why only this one? Was it ceremonial? Experimental? A fragment of forgotten tech that was never used again? Whatever the truth is, one thing's clear. This wasn't just art. It was something more. Something that doesn't fit the timeline we've been told. Beneath the desert sands of Saqqara lies one of Egypt's most baffling structures, the Serapeum. Inside this underground labyrinth sit dozens of massive granite sarcophagi, some weighing over 100 tons each, with lids alone topping 30 tons. But it's not the size that freaks people out, it's the finish. These boxes are cut so precisely, so sharply, that modern engineers have actually measured their surfaces and found margins of error smaller than a human hair. The interiors are mirror-polished granite, not roughly smoothed, polished. These aren't the kind of boxes you'd expect from a civilization working with copper chisels and sand abrasives. And then there are the hieroglyphs. Most are shallow, scratched-on symbols, clearly done later, almost like graffiti. But the boxes themselves? They were made with a level of skill that feels out of sync with the tools that supposedly existed at the time. So how did they do it? Some suggest lost methods involving geopolymers. Others think these boxes were created by a civilization far older than the dynastic Egyptians and simply repurposed later. The wildest theory? That ancient tech, maybe even some sort of sonic cutting tool, was involved. Not lasers exactly, but definitely something more than elbow grease and copper tools. And here's what really bends minds: no one knows why the boxes were made. They're far too large for traditional burials, and no mummies were found inside. Just sealed, oversized underground chambers, filled with mystery, as if something was hidden or protected there. If you're feeling a bit of Stargate vibes here, you're not alone. Okay, now we're entering sci-fi territory, or are we? In the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, there's a panel of hieroglyphs that's been making conspiracy theorists, engineers, and historians argue for years. Why? Because it looks like a helicopter, a submarine, and even what some say resembles a jet or spaceship, carved into the stone over 3,000 years ago. These shapes aren't vague, they're distinct. One has a clear rotor on top. Another has what looks like tail fins. It's the kind of thing that makes your brain stop for a second and say, wait, what? Now, the official explanation is that it's a visual fluke. The carving, they say, is a result of palimpsest, where older hieroglyphs were chiseled away and newer ones placed over them. And erosion caused the shapes to merge into something new and weird. Just a coincidence. But here's the thing. What are the odds that multiple glyphs layered together randomly just happen to form a helicopter and a fighter jet? This isn't cloud watching. These are hard lines, precise shapes, clean forms carved into stone. Some theorists believe it's evidence that ancient Egyptians were recording something they saw, or that they inherited knowledge from an earlier, more advanced culture. There are even whispers of ancient aviation or contact with beings who had that level of technology. Crazy? Maybe. But we have carvings of literal flying machines on walls that are older than the Roman Empire. So before we dismiss it, maybe we should ask, what else did they know that we've forgotten? Because this one carving, hidden high on a temple beam, could be a crack in the timeline. One that doesn't just hint at forgotten history, it challenges the whole story. Tutankhamun's tomb is full of treasures, gold masks, ornate daggers, sacred relics. But nestled among the bling and ritual gear was something that made historians double take: a boomerang. Actually, not just one. King Tut was buried with over 30 throwing sticks, many of them curved in a way that looks suspiciously close to the boomerangs we associate with Aboriginal Australia. Now, let's be clear, not all of them were meant to return when thrown. Some were for hunting birds. But here's where things start getting weird. A few of these sticks are shaped just right, balanced for return flight. And that raises a question no one's really answered. Why would an Egyptian pharaoh need boomerangs? And more importantly, how did the idea of such aerodynamic tools show up in ancient Egypt at all? Because as far as official history goes, Egypt and Australia had zero contact. They were separated by entire continents and oceans. Yet here lies the technology: curved throwing weapons with flight dynamics way ahead of their time, crafted thousands of years ago in the middle of the Sahara. Some researchers chalk it up to parallel evolution, that maybe two completely separate cultures just stumbled upon the same aerodynamic solution. Others aren't so sure. Could it be evidence of lost transoceanic connections? Or is it possible that knowledge from some forgotten seafaring civilization spread across the ancient world, leaving clues like this behind? Whatever the case, the presence of boomerangs in a sealed Egyptian tomb isn't just quirky, it's a crack in the idea that Egypt developed in isolation. Someone somewhere passed on a skill, and it landed right next to the body of a boy king. Most ancient Egyptian art is, symbolic, idealized, and just totally steeped in religious formality. Think side profiles, stiff poses, skin like smooth sandstone. But then you reach Faiyum, and honestly, it hits like a glitch in the Matrix. Buried across the Faiyum region are hundreds of hyper-realistic portraits, painted on wooden panels and attached to mummies. These aren't pharaohs or gods, they're regular people. Men, women, children. And they don't look like stiff hieroglyphs, they look like someone you might actually walk past on the street today. Eyebrows, blush, soft lips, shaded cheeks, even 5 o'clock shadow, captured with stunning, lifelike precision. These portraits date back to Egypt under Roman rule, which explains the fusion of styles. But here's the kicker, the level of realism shown in Faiyum's art disappears completely after this period. It's like someone hit pause on advanced portraiture for over 1,000 years. The technique, known as encaustic painting, where hot wax is used with pigment, isn't just sophisticated, it's durable. That's why the colors still pop today. So who were these people? Some think they were elite Roman Egyptians caught between two worlds. Others wonder if this burst of realism hints at a much older artistic tradition, one that only resurfaced briefly before vanishing again. It's like ancient Instagram meets Renaissance oil painting, but yeah, 1,500 years too early. Why did the Egyptians suddenly switch from symbolic gods to lifelike humans, then switch back again? Was it a brief window into a more human side of the ancient world? Or something even stranger, a glimpse of outside influence the official records don't talk about? In a culture obsessed with eternity, the Faiyum portraits feel more alive than ever. Inside the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, hidden deep in its crypt, is honestly one of the most talked about and controversial carvings in all of Egypt. It's called the Dendera Light, and if you've never seen it before, brace yourself, because it looks exactly like a modern light bulb. Seriously, the carving shows what appears to be a long, bulbous glass tube with a filament-like serpent inside, and a cable leading to a box that suspiciously resembles an electric generator. There's even a figure holding it up like a technician. If this was on a wall in Tesla's lab, you wouldn't think twice. But this is 2,000 years old, long before anything remotely resembling electricity was supposedly invented. Mainstream archaeologists say the carving is purely symbolic, that it represents a lotus flower spawning a snake, a metaphor for creation. That's fine, except why does it look exactly like an illuminated bulb, complete with electrodes and discharge? Some researchers believe the Egyptians may have used primitive electric lighting in deep tombs, since no soot from torches has been found in some corridors. Others think it points to lost high-tech knowledge passed down or even gifted from unknown origins. Is it definitive proof of ancient electricity? Not quite, but when an ancient carving looks like it belongs in an Edison blueprint, it definitely sparks more than one theory. The Dendera Light might not just be symbolic. It might be evidence that someone somehow knew how to light up the dark in a way we've only recently rediscovered. Let's move from electricity to metallurgy, because the blocks at Giza are hiding something far stranger than what you see on the surface. Scattered across several temples and pyramids are dovetail-shaped grooves cut directly into the stone. And they weren't decorative. These grooves once held metal clamps binding blocks together with a technique that honestly just screams industrial engineering. Here's the problem. These clamps aren't just theoretical. Traces of ancient metal fittings have been found, sometimes iron, sometimes unknown alloys. The shapes are precise, the grooves are consistent. They look exactly like the interlocking clamps used today in massive stone architecture, like bridges or dams. So what's this tech doing in 4,000-year-old ruins? Some scholars argue that these clamps were later additions. Others think they came from a more advanced Egyptian phase that didn't make it into the textbooks. But a growing number of researchers suspect this isn't Egyptian tech at all. It might be pre-Egyptian. That's right, evidence of a civilization older than the pyramids, with tech that somehow vanished without a trace. Then there's the most mind-bending idea of all: what if these structures weren't carved, but cast? That's the theory behind ancient geopolymer technology. In other words, were some stone blocks actually an early form of concrete, cast in molds? If true, this would mean the Egyptians, or whoever came before them, weren't just builders. They were engineers with a knowledge base way ahead of their time. Most people believe the Great Sphinx of Giza was built by Pharaoh Kafra around 2500 BC. That's what the textbooks say. But then there's the Inventory Stela, a little-known artifact that tells a very different story. This weathered slab of stone found near the Sphinx itself casually drops a bombshell it claims that the Sphinx already existed during the time of Khufu, Khafra's father, which means the monument would already have been ancient, even in Khafra's day. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The stela also mentions that Khufu didn't build the Sphinx, he merely restored it. That flies in the face of mainstream archaeology. If Khufu was restoring the Sphinx, then who built it? And when? Some researchers believe this could push the Sphinx's origin back by thousands of years into the realm of pre-dynastic civilization. Others tie this theory to water erosion marks found on the Sphinx enclosure, which suggest it was carved during a time when Egypt had heavy rainfall, something that hasn't happened for at least 9,000 years. Official sources call the Inventory Stela unreliable, maybe a piece of royal propaganda. But for those looking at the physical evidence, it might be the missing link that proves Egypt's history goes way further back than we think. A civilization lost to time, buried beneath layers of sand and secrets. In one of the most remote corners of the Sahara Desert, so isolated that even most Egyptians have never heard of it, there's a place called Gilf Kabir. It's a massive, uninhabitable plateau, once used as a setting for The English Patient. But buried within this forgotten stone wilderness is something far more mysterious than a movie set the Cave of Beasts. Discovered in 2002, this cave contains over 5,000 prehistoric drawings, unlike anything seen in Egyptian art. And here's the kicker, they're older than Egypt itself. We're talking 7,000 to 9,000 years old, created long before the pyramids, before dynasties, before even farming reached the Nile. The figures inside are haunting humanoid creatures with clawed hands, strange floating shapes, and outlines of beasts that look nothing like desert wildlife. Some drawings show human-like beings with exaggerated limbs, often with dots, stripes, or patterns that feel symbolic, almost coded. Others resemble bipedal figures with tails, eyes wide open as if in mid-transformation. These are not the hunting scenes you see in typical cave art. This feels otherworldly. Who made them? No one knows. The region was once fertile, a green savanna full of lakes and life. But these artists didn't just draw their surroundings, they drew something else. Some say it's early shamanic art. Others think the beasts are mythological beings, perhaps even visual records of ancient contact with entities we no longer understand. The site raises more questions than answers. Why were these people there? What do they see? And why are so many of their drawings so alien? It's like an entire lost civilization screamed its truth onto the walls, then disappeared into the dust. Not far from Giza lies one of Egypt's least visited, but honestly, most baffling sights, the Sun Temple of Abu Gurab. Built by Pharaoh Kafra over 4,000 years ago, it was dedicated to Rai, the sun god. But you know, this place doesn't just feel ancient. It feels like it's hiding something we're not supposed to understand. The centerpiece is what looks like a giant alabaster platform made from quartz crystal slabs, polished, symmetrical, perfectly leveled. Surrounding it are mysterious basins carved with extreme precision, arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate design, but no one knows their purpose. Some claim they were used for offerings, others say acoustic resonance experiments, and then it gets weirder. Quartz is a piezoelectric material. It responds to pressure by creating electrical charges. So why build a ritual platform out of this specific crystal, if not for some energy-based function? Ancient energy manipulation? Solar amplification? A sonic machine? Theories range from wild to wilder. What makes it more confusing is that mainstream archaeology doesn't really explore this site in depth. There's no flashy light show, no crowd of tourists, just weathered quartz, deep silence, and a layout that screams intention. It almost feels like we're looking at the ruins of a forgotten science, where religion, astronomy, and energy tech were all the same thing. A sacred lab from a time when ancient temples weren't just for worship, but for something bigger, something we still haven't cracked. In 1898, archaeologists digging in a tomb at Saqqara stumbled upon something unexpected, a wooden bird. At first glance, it seemed harmless, just another funerary toy or offering. But decades later, aviation engineers took a closer look, and their jaws dropped. This so-called bird doesn't flap its wings, it doesn't even look like it's meant to. What it does look like is an aircraft, specifically a glider. It has a fuselage, fixed wings, and even an upright tail fin, something birds don't have but planes absolutely do. No feathers, no legs, just pure aerodynamic design. Some researchers ran wind tunnel tests and found that the Saqqara bird could generate lift. If scaled up and adjusted just slightly, it might have actually flown. Not powered flight, but gliding. Which, raises the obvious question, how did the ancient Egyptians understand aerodynamics? Mainstream scholars say it was just a bird figurine, maybe used as a boomerang or toy. But there's nothing playful about its design. It's efficient, mathematical, and oddly modern. And the fact that it came from a tomb, not a child's toy chest, hints at deeper meaning. Was it a symbolic offering to the gods of the sky? A prototype? Or a forgotten relic from an era when flight wasn't just a dream, but maybe, just maybe, a reality? Some even whisper that it could be a scaled-down model of something they actually saw in the skies. A craft, a visitor, a glimpse of tech that doesn't belong in the Bronze Age. Beneath the Giza Plateau lies a structure that most tourists never see, and honestly, most textbooks barely mention. Deep below ground, cut into solid bedrock, is what many call the Tomb of Osiris. But this isn't your average burial chamber. It's a multi-level underground complex complete with shafts, tunnels, and flooded chambers, stretching more than 100 feet below the surface. Found near the Sphinx, it was only fully explored in the late 1990s. Inside, archaeologists discovered a central granite sarcophagus, surrounded by 4 pillars in a perfectly carved cavity, submerged in groundwater. The design is eerily precise, too precise. The lowest chamber, carved directly into stone, is massive, symmetrical, and completely sealed off from the world for millennia. There's no inscription saying who built it, no royal names, no typical funerary decoration, just a black void and a coffin. Some say it was meant to be the mythical burial place of Osiris, the god of the underworld. Others suggest it was never a tomb at all, but a ritual chamber, a stargate, or even an energy device meant to interface with something beyond human understanding. Here's where things get even more cryptic. Radar scans of the Giza Plateau have shown anomalies, hollow areas, strange geometric voids below known structures. The Tomb of Osiris might be just one doorway into a much larger hidden network. And if that's true, it means the Giza Plateau isn't just a collection of monuments. It's a multi-layered machine, part of an ancient system we still haven't deciphered. Something far older and far more advanced than anyone expected. That's about it. Who do you think built the pyramids in Egypt? Share your thoughts in the comments. For more useful information, watch other videos.